The Senate Judiciary Committee was the first to investigate the attempted coup in the Trump Justice Department, in which environmental lawyer Jeffrey Clark, posing as an election law expert suddenly, tried to convince Donald Trump to appoint him acting attorney general so that he could send a letter to government officials in key states won by Joe Biden, telling them the lie that the Justice Department found election fraud in those states and that Republican officials in those states should simply send Trump electors to the Electoral College instead of the legitimate Biden electors. Senate Judiciary Committee member Sheldon Whitehouse wants to know the true origin of that letter. It doesn't appear that Jeffrey Clark actually wrote it himself. He seems to have received a draft of it from another recently arrived Republican lawyer at the Justice Department, who is also not an election expert. Senator Whitehouse told the Washington Post yesterday it certainly could be a symptom of a much larger and more coherent plan than has currently been disclosed. Senator Whitehouse's state of Rhode Island is now the second state, after New York, to pass gun reform legislation since the mass murder at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. The new legislation raises the legal age to purchase any firearms and ammunition in Rhode Island from 18 to 21. It bans the open carry of loaded shotguns in public and bans ammunition magazines containing more than 10 rounds of ammunition. Members of the Rhode Island General Assembly debated the legislation late into the night last night, with protesters for and against the legislation in the gallery watching. Governor Daniel McKee will sign the new laws. Today in Washington, Senator Whitehouse participated in a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing on the impact of gun violence on children, where he defended Rhode Island's new gun laws.
We don't allow people under 21 to buy a beer, so why they need to buy firearms and ammunition is a little hard to explain, particularly in the wake of what we've seen recently. And for the life of me, I can't imagine, as a gun owner myself, why you need to open carry a loaded long gun around in this society. So I think we're seeing some signs of progress at the state level.
Joining us now is Democratic Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island. He's a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator, let me begin where you were today in the hearing on gun safety and Rhode Island's experience overnight in passing these new laws. What is this going to mean for Rhode Island?
Well, the issue of guns is just as passionate and emotional in Rhode Island as everywhere else, and I thought it was a terrific moment when our General Assembly, in full public, in a very lively debate, came down and made three, I think, very sensible and important decisions that you've already described. So I'm proud of my home state legislature right now.
And I want to get to your concerns about what was going on in the Justice Department in late December when there was an attempted coup there with Jeffrey Clark trying to take over the Justice Department with this letter that he was willing to send with his signature on it. But you suspect it didn't originate with him. What is it that you are suspecting about the origin of this letter?
Well, for starters, Jeffrey Clark was described by his own Trump appointee colleagues as not competent. The body English in the Judiciary Committee hearing that I attended expressed real disdain for the guy by other Trump-appointed folks in the Department of Justice. He ran the environmental section, which in a Trump Department of Justice is a job that requires you to do nothing. And he'd been lifted up to the position of acting civil division chief by the mere fact of vacancies as people left the Trump administration. So this is not a guy with elections law experience, a lot of respect in the department, any background that would qualify him to write a letter like this. So finding out what the real source of the letter was, given that unlikelihood, I think becomes an investigative priority, and I believe that that is being reviewed by the Department of Justice and by the January 6th Commission.
And you have done extensive work about this vast network of dark money funded, anonymously funded operations that work on the Republican side of these kinds of questions, on the Republican side of Supreme Court nominations, on the Republican side of Justice Department interests in general, do you suspect that this kind of idea of having just sending letters telling legislators in states that they can simply throw out the Biden electors and replace them with the Trump electors that they've chosen themselves, do you suspect it originated out of that dark world?
It could well have. Both Jeffrey Clark and his associate in the Department of Justice, who may have produced the letter for him, instantly landed when they left the Department of Justice in dark money-funded organizations. So it's an important investigative thread to pursue. And speaking of important investigative threads to pursue, you will recall how Chief Justice Roberts went to DEFCON 1 over the leak of the Alito abortion opinion and demanded investigations and said it was a betrayal of the court. If you look at the Ginny Thomas situation right now that you were describing earlier, it seems to me that when you have the spouse of a Supreme Court justice now repeatedly connected with an insurrection against the country, and now connected with an individual who was so deeply in trouble that a Trump White House legal counsel advised him to get a criminal defense attorney, that if you're going to go to DEFCON 1 over the leak of a draft opinion, you might want to consider going to DEFCON 3 or 4 or even 5 and start investigating within the court what the heck is going on here. So there's another big investigative gap in this space, and it's the Supreme Court being unwilling to look at its own problems as regards Justice Thomas.
You know, we have used, we've worn out the word unprecedented in the Trump era, beginning at some point in 2015 in that presidential campaign. But I have been struggling to find the words to impress upon this audience tonight how unprecedented the Virginia Thomas situation is. The history of possible crime among Supreme Court justices' wives is exactly zero in its entire history, right up until this year, with Ginny Thomas's involvement in this insurrection. And she herself specifically advocating crimes, advocating the same kind of violations of law that Donald Trump was advocating.
Yeah, I think, weren't people supposed to be taken out on a barge off Guantanamo and shot without due process? The whole thing is pretty extreme, but where it comes back to the court and where it comes back to something that if you take the court at its own word, that it should be the only one to look into its situation, it should be the only one to clean up its mess, it seems to me that it's time to look at this mess because of Justice Thomas's vote that would have disabled or diminished the ability of the January 6th Commission to look into evidence that we now know would have led to his wife.
Should Justice Thomas, at minimum, if not resigning from the court, be publicly announcing right now his recusal from any cases that could involve the presidential election or the transition of power January 6th in any way?
That would be a stunningly obvious and proper thing for him to do. The fact that it has not happened casts an additional cloud over the court. And again, the fact that Justice Roberts will go to DEFCON 1 and call in the marshals and declare an investigation and say the court's been betrayed because a document leaked and then do absolutely nothing on this set of facts is another very, very unfortunate situation for the court.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, thank you very much for joining us again tonight. Always appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.